Okay, so welcome to our deep dive into Ridley Scott's Prometheus, 2012, the one you sent our way.
Yeah.
We've got a whole stack of behind-the-scenes stuff here, creative decisions, how the whole thing came together,
Right.
and really the full spectrum of reactions.
Yeah.
Praise, criticism, all of it. We're not here to, just recap the plot or anything like that.
Right.
We want to get
Not to you
into
now.
the good stuff, the how and the why, and why people had such strong feelings about it.
I think that's what makes it so interesting, right?
Yeah.
It's divisive. It gets people talking.
Ready to explore the origins and the impact of Prometheus.
Let's do it.
Okay.
What jumps out right away when you're looking at the beginnings of Prometheus is Ridley Scott's, I guess you could call it his ambition, to do a lot more than just a straight-up Alien prequel.
Oh, yeah.
He wanted to dig into the backstory of the space jockey.
Oh, right.
From the 79 Alien, but aim for something bigger, almost mythological in scope. And right from the start, he said the Alien versus Predator films, they didn't happen. Not in his universe.
That's interesting that he just kind of drew that line in the sand. It's his sandbox. He gets to decide.
Right.
And he was really insistent that this wasn't a simple prequel. Point A to point B leading right into Alien. At first they talked about TWO films, but Scott's condition for directing, according to what we're reading, was to do something more conceptual, something that would explore bigger ideas than just, filling in a few blanks.
Right.
So he was aiming for something much bigger right from the start.
It was never about just connecting the dots. Scott wanted Prometheus to eventually suggest, by the end, the origins of the Xenomorph, that alien DNA.
Right.
But as its own story.
As its own story.
It was about building a universe with its own internal mythology, exploring really big questions.
And to build that universe, they paid attention to every detail. I mean, look at Michael Fassbender's prep work to play David, the android.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't just studying up on robotics or AI. This guy was looking at figures who represented androgyny, servitude, even the physicality of an Olympic diver. It's fascinating.
It is.
What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, what's amazing is how each of those influences adds a layer to David's character. Blade Runner, obviously. Another Ridley Scott film.
Right.
Gave him a foundation. The classic android archetype in sci-fi. Then you've got Bowie in The Man Who Fell to Earth. All that androgyny, right?
Oh, yeah.
Feeds into David's ambiguity. And then there's The Servant with Dirk Bogarde. That was probably about looking at manipulation, hidden motives, and Lawrence of Arabia. Well, you've got that connection to Prometheus later on, too.
Right.
Maybe David sees himself in Lawrence, that complex sense of self. And even a bit of a messiah complex, maybe. Then you throw in Greg Louganis. That gave David that strange grace, precision in his movements. He's almost too perfect.
Not quite human.
Yeah.
And they carried that attention to detail over to the visuals, too.
Yeah.
Like the Weyland Corporation logo, that 3-triangle design.
Right.
It's like an echo. It connects back to the beginning of Alien and even hints at the Weyland-Yutani logo we see later in Aliens.
It's like a thread running through all of them, visually connecting the different parts of the story.
Right. And it's part of David's fingerprint. That's a pretty cool detail.
Yeah, it's great. It reinforces that connection Scott was going for between all these films.
Yeah.
And you see that same visual language in the costumes, too. The crew uniforms. In Alien, the Nostromo crew, they had colorful patches.
Yeah.
But in Prometheus, those patches are darker, almost muted. That wasn't just a random choice. It really plays into that fallen angel theme.
Don't see.
It suggests a more, a darker journey for this crew. Morally ambiguous.
Okay, let's talk about the production itself, this idea of doing it live. They used practical effects whenever they could, and that was partly because of some advice Scott got back when he was making Blade Runner.
Yeah, Douglas Trumbull, he was a pioneer in visual effects. And he had this saying, if you can do it live, do it live. And Scott really took that to heart. Besides just liking how practical effects look, they can often save you money compared to doing everything digitally.
Right.
Now, granted, Prometheus was a huge production.
Oh, yeah.
Over 1,300 CGI shots.
Wow.
Weta Digital and Moving Picture Company, they handled all of that.
Oh, wow.
But they often use CGI to build on top of the practical stuff or for things you just couldn't do for real, like those giant alien landscapes or the way creatures like the Deacon and the Hammerpeed move. So it was really both. Practical and digital working together.
So they were finding the balance, using CGI to add to the real effects. Makes sense? I read about that full-size trilobite facehugger. That must have been something to see on set.
Oh, absolutely. Having a real physical thing there for the actors to react to and for the CGI artists to use as a reference, it just makes it all feel more believable.
More grounded. And the choice of Iceland as a filming location really adds to that alien feeling of LV-223, right? I mean, those landscapes are just incredible.
They are. Originally, they were looking at Jordan and Morocco, but things were too unstable politically, so Iceland it was.
Interesting.
And they even had to build roads just to get to Dedifoss Falls for that opening scene. That's a dedication to getting the shot.
Oh, yeah.
And Stephen Messing, he was the visual effects art director, and he used real-world references to make those locations feel even more alien. NASA imagery, photos of Iceland and Wadi Rum.
Oh, wow.
All of that fed into how LV-223 looks.
It's familiar and strange at the same time. I mean, that's what I love about good science fiction.
Exactly.
And it turns out shooting in 3D wasn't a big deal for Ridley Scott, all thanks to Dariusz Wolski, the cinematographer. He convinced Scott it was practically as easy as filming regularly with the tech they had after Avatar.
Right.
But there's this interesting detail. They had to add that dark, oppressive look from Alien in post-production.
Yeah.
Because 3D needed more light.
That's right.
It's a good example of how tech limitations can affect the look of a film. 3D cameras need a lot of light to capture depth properly. So the sets were brighter than they would have been for regular 2D filming, which meant they couldn't get those deep shadows, that claustrophobic feel of Alien naturally.
Right.
They had to create it afterwards with lighting and color grading.
That makes sense. Ridley Scott has a habit of putting out director's cuts of his films.
Yeah.
But with Prometheus, he decided the theatrical version was the one he wanted out there.
That's interesting.
It's interesting, though he did give us a bunch of deleted scenes on the home release. 30 minutes worth.
Wow. That's a lot of that.
There's a whole different five-field attack sequence that's longer in a different location in the deleted scenes.
Why do you think he cut them?
I think he knew what he wanted. He explored other options, and we see that in the deleted scenes, but ultimately the theatrical version is the story he felt strongest about.
You can really see how his mind works.
Yeah, and he was really hands-on with everything, especially the visual design.
He had these storyboards he drew called Ridleygrams, and those were how he communicated and gave approval on everything. You can tell he's a visual thinker.
It really speaks to his artistic vision. He's involved in every detail, from the early sketches to the final product,
Right.
making sure everyone is on the same page, that the film matches his ideas.
It's amazing. And there are these nice personal touches, too, like Noomi Rapace, who played Shaw.
Yeah.
She spent part of her childhood in Iceland, so filming there let her visit family.
Oh, that's nice.
Just a nice little touch. And then there's the push-up scene with Meredith Vickers. That got people talking. They actually filmed it twice, didn't they?
Yeah, once with Charlize Theron in underwear and once with her nude. They showed the nude version in some test screenings and even used it in some early promo stuff.
Oh.
But they ended up using the underwear version in the final film. I guess they wanted to keep it PG-13.
Right. And you can't forget about that scene where Vickers uses the flamethrower on Holloway.
Yeah.
They used a real flamethrower.
Well,
and Charlize Theron was genuinely shocked. They kept her reaction in the film.
now that's what I call authenticity. That surprise on her face just adds so much to the scene, and Scott is known for doing things like that. Keeping actors in the dark about what's going to happen, like Kate Dickie with the hammer pea.
Oh, yeah.
He wants those real, visceral reactions. It makes the performances more believable.
It definitely works. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the language and symbolism they used, like the engineer language.
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating.
They went all out. Ridley Scott worked with SO at the University of London, brought in this linguist, Anil Biltu, talk about world building.
It shows they wanted a real alien culture, not just gibberish. And Bill, too, based it on Proto-Indo-European, or PIE. That's like the ancestor of a lot of modern languages.
Wow.
So it makes sense in the film's world that David, being this advanced AI, could figure it out and speak it. Like there's this ancient connection between the engineers and humans.
It's a deep cut. And then there are those marks near the landing site. They look just like the Nazca lines in Peru. Those giant drawings in the desert.
Yeah. Right away, you think about ancient astronauts, like those lines were landing strips or something.
Right. The film plays with that idea.
It does. And it's really interesting because there are actual theories about what the Nazca lines are, maybe for rituals or astronomy.
Right.
So the film touches on both, that fascination with ancient mysteries and then, the real science, too.
And the moon's name, LV-223, there might be a biblical reference there.
Yeah.
To Leviticus 22.3.
Oh, really?
It's about being cut off from God's presence for, like, approaching holy things while you're unclean. thematically with all the bad stuff that happens to the crew.
It kind of fits.
It's like foreshadowing their fate.
Yeah, and there are other little hints of religion throughout the film. Shaw's crucifix, the fact that the Prometheus lands on Christmas Day. In an early version of the script, the engineers were planning to attack Earth around the time of Christ's death.
That's interesting. Even though they toned that down, you can still see traces of it.
It adds another layer. It's like the film's asking about divine judgment, creation, and destruction.
Then there's David and his obsession with T.E. Lawrence.
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia. And the fact that the Vickers machine gun was used in World War I.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, Peter Weyland even quotes Lawrence of Arabia.
You think Scott's trying to tell us something with all that?
Yeah, about ambition. About creating powerful things, but maybe for the wrong reasons. Like, the dark side of human history and empires.
It definitely makes you think.
And they actually renamed that final creature. In the script, it's called the Ultramorph, but in the film, it's the Deacon, because it looks like a Catholic bishop's hat.
I never noticed that.
It ties back into those religious themes, doesn't it?
It does. Like a corrupted creation.
Yeah, and they made it mostly as a practical effect, like a puppet on a rod. Then they added the slime and stuff digitally.
Interesting.
I read that originally it was going to bite its own umbilical cord and then chase Shaw and David. But they cut that.
Yeah, they cut a lot.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the characters. Janty Yates, the costume designer, was very intentional with the clothes. She wanted them to reflect the characters.
Oh, yeah.
Like Vickers. Her suit is very severe, very structured.
I see.
It shows she's in control, very corporate. David's outfit is all straight lines, very precise.
Right.
Which emphasizes that he's not human, that he's artificial. Holloway is dressed more casually.
What about him?
It suggests he's more relaxed, more willing to take risks. Then you've got Janik, the pilot, in his practical jacket. Very experienced, very grounded.
Right.
Even Shaw's clothes change throughout the film. She starts out more feminine and then ends up in that functional flight suit.
Showing her determination.
Exactly.
Cool. And what about Vickers being Weyland's daughter? They hinted at that pretty well, didn't they?
Yeah, it was subtle, the resemblance to David, Weyland calling David his son.
Right.
Janik even asks Vickers if she's an android because she acts so much like David.
Yeah.
They were definitely dropping clues.
Smart. It makes their relationship more complex.
Right. And the deleted scenes show even more of Weyland's personality, his God complex, how he sees David as just a means to an end. I read that might explain what David does in Alien Covenant.
It does make sense.
And the engineer doesn't react well to either Weyland or David. Makes you wonder why.
Maybe it's because Weyland is so arrogant, or maybe the engineer sees something dangerous in David. Kind of like their own creator-creation problems.
Exactly. And David, even though he says he doesn't have emotions, you can see he's affected by how Weyland, Vickers, and Holloway treat him.
He's definitely not as emotionless as he pretends to be.
Right. Maybe that's why he becomes the villain we see later, all that resentment building up.
Yeah, it could be. It's like if you create something, you have a responsibility to treat it with respect. Otherwise, well, look what can happen.
Right. And you've got Shaw and her scientific curiosity, wanting to understand life's origins. And then David, he's just exploring. No ethics, no morals holding him back. That contrast causes a lot of problems.
Totally different motivations. Shaw is driven by this human desire for knowledge, for connection. David, he's just curious and dangerous.
Yeah. And the film keeps coming back to this creator-creation theme. How humans treat David, how the engineers seem to view humanity.
It's a cycle.
And that ending, with the engineers' just utter contempt for the humans, it completes the circle.
Like creation leading to disappointment, or even hate. Prometheus really makes you think about the responsibilities of creators, what they expect from their creations.
Okay, so how did audiences and critics react to all of this? It was a big movie, definitely not some indie darling. It made over $400 million globally.
On a $130 million budget.
That's no small feat.
It wasn't the biggest sci-fi hit ever, but it definitely did well. People wanted to see what Ridley Scott would do with the alien universe.
But the reactions were all over the place.
Oh yeah, people either loved it or hated it. Lots of strong opinions.
Especially about how smart the characters were. Or weren't. Scientists of the future are stupid, which is a pretty common complaint.
I remember that.
What were people saying?
Well, they thought the characters made dumb decisions, not bringing enough weapons, getting lost in a relatively small space, leaving their posts to hook up, taking their helmets off on an alien planet.
Oh, yeah, that scene.
And then there's that classic scene where they're running in a straight line from the crashing spaceship.
So bad.
People felt like, if these people are scientists, they should know better.
I get that.
But some people defended the characters. They said, hey, when you're panicking, you don't always think straight.
That's true.
Or maybe future tech is so advanced that they rely on their instruments more. Like, taking off your helmet isn't such a big deal. And they pointed to the appalling Medipod, how it heals Shaw so quickly after she should have died.
Right, right.
So it really comes down to how much you're willing to suspend your disbelief, I guess.
Yeah, some people were willing to let it slide, others weren't.
And don't forget, even the Vatican chimed in. They gave the film a bad review, criticized how it dealt with good and evil.
It's not every day the Vatican reviews a sci-fi film. It shows just how much Prometheus was trying to tackle these big questions about creation, morality, what it means to be human.
And that's where the debate gets really interesting. Did Prometheus actually answer those questions, or was it just a bunch of loose ends and unresolved plots?
I think that's why people are still talking about it.
Right. Some found it thought-provoking, open to interpretation. Others just felt confused and unsatisfied.
Yeah. But even with the criticisms, everyone seemed to agree that the visuals, the sets, and Michael Fassbender's performance as David were amazing.
Absolutely. Prometheus is a beautiful film, technically speaking.
Yeah.
And Fassbender, he was brilliant. So subtle, so creepy.
He really brought David to life.
Even people who hated the film loved his performance.
Yeah. And of course, you can't talk about Prometheus without comparing it to the Alien films.
Right, everyone was doing that.
Some people loved that it added to the Alien universe, gave it this deeper mythological backstory.
Well, others felt it was missing that alien feel.
Yeah.
The tension, the iconic creature design.
It definitely went in a different direction.
Yeah.
More philosophical, less focused on the horror.
Yeah, and that probably turned some fans off.
It's interesting. And that whole idea of the ancient astronauts, the engineers seeding life on Earth with their DNA.
Yeah, that taps into those theories we talked about.
It makes you wonder, where do we really come from? The film plays with that idea.
And the ending. Shaw and David's head flying off to the engineer homeworld.
Oh, yeah?
Definitely setting us up for a sequel.
Yeah, Ridley Scott wanted to explore more, leave us with questions. And he did.
He definitely did.
So what have we learned? Prometheus is a visually stunning film, but it also asks some really big questions about creation, about the relationship between creators and what they create.
It's ambitious, and it caught people talking, arguing, thinking. That's a testament to Ridley Scott's vision, I think. The way he used practical effects, built a whole new language, tried to connect it to the alien world while still doing something new.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
So, to you listening, what do you think Prometheus was trying to say?
Yeah, what did you take away from it?
About our origins, creation, our place in the universe.
What do you think?
Let us know.